winning Miss Sussex, that was probably an example of being successful. But at the time, I was just constantly giving myself grief about the fact that, I won Miss Sussex, but I didn't win Miss England. But I do also believe that, everything happens for a reason. So I was just a very troubled young individual, at times hanging around with the wrong people. I was quite angry, and that probably started with my parents splitting up at the age of 14, and I really struggled with that. And my nan was one of the first black women to reside in Littlehampton. My mum and my auntie experienced a lot of racism and bullying, and to some extent, that continued when I was growing up as well. Didn't see myself as beautiful or even having, much talent, I suppose. I just never really felt good about myself, I suppose. How things are playing out are not who I believe I actually am as a person. I was presented with the opportunity to go to Gambia and do charity work out there, and that literally changed my life. It could be with anything. It could be smoking, drinking alcohol, or the choices you make in terms of the people that you hang around with, your career. They're all really big changes to make in our lives. The question is loving yourself, but also representing. It was all about representation and making history. When I won Miss Sussex, if I'd won Miss England, I would have been the first black woman to represent England in 73 years at the time. There has been women of ethnic minorities that are like, but I just don't want to walk into a room where people just don't look like me. And I would challenge that person to challenge their perspective and be like, no, you're good enough to walk into that room, so come and join me. I just feel extremely grateful to be in a position where I've literally just tried to do it my way, and hopefully there's something in that. Life's not perfect, but you just got to make lemonade where possible and just take advantage of every opportunity, and in that, beautiful things happen.
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. We're sharing the stories of our guests. I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey.
Need a new van? Why not pop down to Rivervale in Brighton? Explore our range of new and used vans, lovingly prepared and ready to work just as hard as you do. Rivervale, making motoring manageable.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Delighted to have the inspirational, my good friend, the lovely Stephanie Pryor with us. Welcome to the podcast, Stephanie.
Thank you for bringing me along today. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is amazing. We've known each other for quite a few years now, and we're recording this on the back of you just doing the front cover as well with SBT, which was just an amazing front cover, an amazing story, and what you're doing with HERstory, and
thank you.
Which is going to be great, and we'll obviously delve into that. So, and an exciting new chapter for you in your life.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. We've got lots to talk about.
We've got loads to talk about, which is going to be awesome. But well, look, we're going to kick off as we always do. With I just want to check in with where you are right now. At 33 weeks pregnant, and how you're landing today with life where Stephanie Pryor. You all right, mate?
Yeah, I think so. A bit tired, but other than that, no, I'm good. So my app, updated me today. I'm exactly 33 weeks pregnant, so not long to go now. And in terms of where I'm at the moment, I'm just looking forward to getting the next sort of 3 weeks not out the way, but just sort of achieving what needs to be achieved. And then I'll feel like I've definitely earned the right to put my feet up, hopefully for a couple of weeks before baby arrives and a new chapter begins. So yeah, lots to look forward to, lots to do in the meantime as well. But I'm really grateful for how everything's played out and what I'm currently working on at the moment.
Yeah, okay. And have you, like, I guess, like that planning to, you know, we're obviously as business owners, we plan, right, we look forward, but then obviously you're navigating, you know, becoming a mum as well within that sort of thing. So has things gone according to plan in relation to, like, leading up to HERstory and where you are with the business and things you've got in place that you wanted to?
Starting from what point would you say?
Well, I guess just looking at for you to start to step away from to go and have the baby.
Yeah.
So you've got, I know Andy, I think, has come on board in the
Definitely. Yeah, it's probably the first time in a very long time that I actually feel, even though I haven't got to the sort of end of this chapter yet, that I feel really proud in terms of what I've achieved to date. Because I mean, about 9 months ago, August, I was on holiday, and I was just reflecting on my first 2 years of business, and I didn't know that I was pregnant. I was going into my third year of business, and with the aim that this year was going to be even more successful in terms of the money that I could generate, the clients that I'd be working with. And then when I found out that I was pregnant, that kind of changed everything, and I had to think about everything very differently. You know, I eventually, when I had calmed my hormones down, I started to put a plan in place. And it's things that I would have liked to have worked towards prior to becoming pregnant, but this really pushed me to prioritise it. And I've always kind of said, you know, I'd like to bring on people that are almost better than me in certain ways to help my business grow. And bringing on Andy Stenning, my former boss, is definitely one of those things, because he was a mentor to me. I wouldn't have even gone into marketing or sales if it wasn't for him. He created a role for me many years ago, and I learned a lot from him in terms of marketing, sales, and how you can make sometimes things that are much smaller than they are look much bigger, and the results of that, you know, in the long term, selling businesses, for example. To bring him on board, it's been absolutely brilliant, and he's really found his feet. And you know, it's something really scary when your clients rely on you. You know, people have bought into me. I am my brand. Even before I set up my own business, you know, people have relied on me to execute the marketing. So delegating isn't something that comes natural to me. And even the thought of that was quite scary. So I feel quite proud that I'm now in a position where that started and I've got support. And I think to myself, Cora, like, if I'd known that this would make such, you know, life so much easier, I would have done it ages ago. So it's
and
fascinating.
how have you found that, like that? Because I really resonate with that, because I find it tricky, especially when you're really independent and you go, I know I can do this, and you just get on and you end up doing loads of stuff. But one thing I take from what you said about you know, finding great people around us, right, to be able to deliver better than we can, right? But in some cases, but that for me, recognising that's probably the sign of great leadership, right? Being able to identify that and seeing that, and especially when, I guess, prior to obviously being pregnant, maybe not thinking that you had to delegate as much, but like you said, that's forced you to go, well, I've got to let go, because I'm not going to be around to be able to do that, so I've got to let go of someone. How has that felt, being able to let go of stuff? And
the thought of it initially was really scary, and I really didn't know how it was going to play out. I've just had to sort of almost have faith in taking the right steps. and taking on advice from entrepreneurs that have done it, that are just like, no, that's what you need to do. If you want to grow your business, you have to bring people on board. So, yeah, just, having faith in the process, has put me in a position now where, I'm really pleased of what I've done, the decisions that I've made. It's quite exciting as well because, it's changed my outlook on the future, I suppose. Before, I don't know what I was doing, just juggling lots of plates, and I wasn't thinking about the next step. If anything, it's just keep going, keep taking on more where you can, keep doing a good job. I wasn't thinking in an entrepreneurial way, which doesn't come natural to me, which does, I would say, come very natural to someone like Andy. So to commercialise my business is something that, it's part of the next chapter, really, and I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully I can bring on, more people further down the line that, will support what we set out to do as a brand, which is, make people stand out, good businesses, good individuals, and do a good job of it, and, stand out against our competitors as well.
Yeah. I love it. It's a couple of that full circle moment as well. Like you said, having the opportunity with Andy at the start, and then now having him coming to work. What an amazing full circle moment, right? So. It
is. We actually talked about it years ago. I remember because after I finished working at Searchers UK, and just to give some background on that, so I finished university. I studied anthropology of all things, which kind of gave me options, which is why I did it, because you could cover politics, media, human rights law, many things that I was passionate about. And then I came out of uni and I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, I did some work experience with the BBC, which was absolutely fantastic, but it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. I got to interview stage and then I didn't get the job, and then I didn't really know what to do. So I went into like recruitment and dead end jobs, really, as you do after university. And my objective really was just to earn some money and claw back some of that student loan that I had built up. And I went into a job opportunity with Andy in the interview. It was an admin role. And within about 20 minutes, he was like, yeah, I don't see you doing an admin role. So with that in mind, if I created a sales and marketing job for you, would you be interested? And I was like, yeah. And I worked with him for 5 years and only left really when Andy found out that he had cancer. So he decided to sell the business, and he sold it to the National Accident Helpline, who came in with their corporates, and everything changed. And also Andy left. And Andy was like a mentor to me. So what I was getting from that job had changed, and I almost felt forced out of my role. I took a break, but in the meantime, we continued to be friends. I remember being in his garden one evening, catching up with him and his wife, and he was like, hopefully one day we'll work together again. So it's really good that it's come around, and I probably didn't expect it to come around so quick.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the other thing, it's been amazing to see the last couple of years as well, and how the business has grown and what you've achieved, and because I still remember having the conversation with Stan that you was going to go out on your own, right? I remember, and with someone they're just going to smash it, and as you have done, and it's been such a brilliant thing to be able, from an outsider, to be able to watch and see, and it's been great because we've done stuff together, like we support HERstory and the other bits, and we've obviously been partners with the business club the last couple of years, but just been amazing to see that growth, as I know you would do. You. So it's been brilliant to see, and then like you say, excited as well to see that next chapter, right, and getting the people on board that you have done to help get you to that next stage.
Definitely. It's funny though, because I haven't thought about it in the way that maybe others see it. It's felt like, ever since my 20s, just a lot of juggling and just trying to make the most out of every single opportunity that is presented to me. And I think in the process, I haven't really stopped and acknowledged the progress that I've made, I suppose, until recent times, because the change that has taken place over the last 8 months and will continue to do so is very different. And yeah, it's like life has almost slowed down, and it's made me think about, oh, okay, 5 years ago, I was, a marketing manager for a law firm, and I was earning this amount of money, and I was doing X, Y, Z, and it was really hard. And then, I almost felt like pushed to go out on my own, like I'd reached a point where I couldn't go any further in employment. And again, with that, I didn't know how it was going to play out. And if it wasn't for certain people encouraging me and reminding me of the skills that I had, who knows, whether I would have made that leap. But yeah, I did. And when I did, I wasn't even earning enough to pay my mortgage, but it was just such a gamble, Faith in yourself is such a powerful thing. And then, going from one client to then announcing that I was self-employed on LinkedIn, and then getting another couple more clients, and then earning more than I was ever as an employee. And then my partner being like, well, why don't you push yourself even more, go for 6 clients? So I did. And yeah, it's been a lot, and I've been juggling a lot in the process, and probably as well not taking time to acknowledge everything that's happened, because I've still felt during that whole time that I'm trying to prove myself, mainly probably to myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, more to yourself than other, because I think like from an outside, and people I know who respect you and see the great stuff you do. But I think so many people, like, I can't imagine many people you spoke to at that starting point and going, oh, I'm thinking of going out, didn't have a similar responses to me, going, you'll smash it, like, go and do it and go out there because of that belief. But yeah, and I think it's so, like, we're sometimes our own biggest critic, right?
100%.
Other people can tell us how amazing, we've got to, I guess, validate ourselves or believe it ourselves, right?
100%. And yeah, I'm just, so grateful that, to have individuals on the business network like yourself, who, have positively pushed me in the right direction. Like, that's so nice. So yeah, I'll forever be grateful for that.
Well, look, what we've talked about, like you said, the growth really of the last couple of years, but it's the big question, right? Success. What does, sitting here today, what does it mean to you now? How do you define success?
Such an easy but difficult question to answer. I mean, ultimately, success is, having a goal or an idea, I suppose, in mind and achieving it. But if I was to delve a little bit deeper into that, I would say it's probably reaping the rewards or seeing the results of your faith and self-belief in something that you set out to achieve. And I think gratitude plays an element in that as well. When I think back to some of the really cool things that I've done, I haven't always seen myself as successful when I've achieved them. And yeah, I think it's probably because I wasn't maybe, I don't know, thinking about it in the right way, and maybe didn't have the gratitude in place at the time. But yeah, I think gratitude plays a really powerful part in us acknowledging our own success. It's very different, from an outside perspective. As an example, winning Miss Sussex, that was probably an example of being successful. And, that opportunity then, drove me to do many other things along the way. And it's amazing how other people read into it. But at the time, I was just constantly giving myself grief about the fact that, yeah, okay, I won Miss Sussex, but I didn't win Miss England. I went on to Miss Universe Great Britain, but I didn't win it. Like, constantly thinking about maybe not, I don't know, getting to the point that I wanted to get to. But I do also believe that, everything happens for a reason. So, yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Like, because there's certain things that we will go, you say about achievement and getting to that point, and you go, but ultimately sometimes we get there and it's not maybe the success that we felt, that feeling that we felt was going to be there. Hence why I guess, like you mentioned about gratitude, but and actually celebrating them, all of those wins along the way, whatever they look like, because ultimately there's always going to be somewhere, there's always going to be someone doing something better, there's always going to be someone who's achieved more, whether it be more money or more gold medals, whatever those achievements are. But and I know the whole cliche about the journey and not the destination, but it's so true. I like to celebrate those wins along the way, whatever they look like, and be grateful for where, because like you said, ultimately you look at where you are now to a couple of years ago, a few years ago, working for another law firm and then starting your own business and then going on and what you've achieved. That's just such an incredible journey to have got there, and just to sit there and take stock. Is this period, I guess, in your life at the moment, especially obviously being forced, I guess, to slow down a little bit, to be able to give you a bit more time to reflect and look back and go, God, how far you have come?
Yeah. It's been pretty, when I think back to, where I was 5 years ago, it's the first time, and I haven't even really got to the end bit yet, where I feel like I'm very close to giving myself a pat on the back and being like, yeah, well done. I probably won't earn as much as I did last year, for example, because I'll be going on mat leave and, I'm paying for more resources now as a business. But I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like I've achieved so much more. It's not all about the money. And I'm really looking forward rather than just being in the moment. And I haven't felt like that for a while. So, that I feel really grateful for, just even that feeling in itself.
Yeah, I love that. And I get you mentioned obviously about Miss Sussex and Miss Universe and Miss England and stuff. I'd be interested to, before we touch on that, just take me back to like growing up, and what do I need to know about a young Stephanie growing up that shaped who sits in front of us?
Wow, it's been quite a journey. Long story short, I'll start with where I was at the age of 16, really, which was, I was just a very troubled young individual, at times hanging around with the wrong people. I was quite angry. And
angry with society or with what
I think so. Circumstances, society, just not being probably where I wanted to be at that time. And that probably started with my parents splitting up at the age of 14, and I really struggled with that. And then, I originally grew up in Littlehampton, and that in itself, had its challenges. I mean, if I go back a few decades prior to that, my nan was one of the first black women to reside in Littlehampton. My mum and my auntie experienced a lot of racism and bullying, and to some extent, that continued when I was growing up as well. But I was quite a strong character, so I didn't always acknowledge it. But there were definitely some really uncomfortable situations, and I didn't see myself in a very positive light, maybe. Didn't see myself as beautiful or even having, much talent, I suppose. I was just, even I remember with my SATs results, it was, I was average at best. And I just never really felt good about myself, I suppose. And then I moved to Brighton when I was 13 years old. And my parents had just divorced. And that was really difficult in itself because, Littlehampton's a very small place. My dad lived around the corner. I was very much a daddy's girl. And being 30 miles away from him, even if that's not actually that far for a 13-year-old, it felt like ages away. And then going into a new school in year 8, and all of those groups have already formed, those friendships. But because I was quite a strong character, luckily I had, groups of people coming up to me and were interested in me, intrigued by, who I was and what I looked like, how I presented myself. And I settled in, but I just became behind on education because, where I left Littlehampton School, certain subjects were very different in how they were playing out in the curriculum when I went to Hove Park School. So, yeah, I just ended up my education just took a complete dive.
Did you enjoy school though, or?
I enjoyed the social element of it. If I look back at all my school reports, it's like, she's very sociable, but there's nothing positive about the actual education element of it. I was just a bit of a distraction, and I enjoyed distracting people. I would shy away from things that I didn't know how to do. Like, I've never naturally been good at technology, and I remember getting people to do my IT work for me. The only subjects that I really enjoyed were PE, media and art. I loved the idea of putting things together, like being asked to create a magazine cover. I loved that. I loved drawing. I loved painting. But even then, I was sitting there having a chat with everyone and distracting people and just being an annoyance to the teachers. So I was never a teacher's pet. And then, I came out of school with just 2 GCSEs at C grade. And I just got myself into some trouble. And at that point, I just kind of realised, like, this is not, how things are playing out are not who I believe I actually am as a person. And I was fortunate enough, at the time they had the YMCA youth clubs. There was one in Hove, and it was such a saviour to so many of us young people at the time. There was this brilliant youth worker called Steve. He was like a second dad to me. And I was presented with the opportunity to go to Gambia and do charity work out there. And that literally changed my life. I remember, I think on the second to last day, we went to a slave museum, a slave island, and we met Kunta Kinte's family from Roots. And so many things happened on that day. Like, I remember being so excited to meet Kunta Kinte's family because I'd watched Roots a couple of times. It's a very sad story, but it was, a story that was very important to me. And then when I met them, ultimately they were just sort of begging for money, and it just didn't play out as I expected to as a 16-year-old. I remember also being on the slave island and being told that, like, there was like 3,000 people on this island and how they were treated. And that really upset me. And then the last bit was going into the museum, and you just had the sort of drafted papers of the slave ships. And for whatever, like, all of that, I think I just ended up having this epiphany at the time where, I'm 16, I've got no qualifications, I live in the UK, I'm in this country, surrounded by people in poverty, and there's a sad story that's played out, but one that actually resonates with my own. And I started to reflect on, the hardships that my ancestors had gone through, even going back to my great grandma and her being and my grandma being part of the Windrush generation, and, the sacrifices that they made to come from Jamaica to the UK, and the experiences that they had. And I just thought to myself, I can't believe I'm wasting my opportunities. And I just broke down in front of everyone, and no one knew what was really wrong with me at the time. Like, it was a sad day, but I was literally hysterical in this museum. And I went home after that trip, and my mum sat me down on the bed, and there was a letter from the college basically saying that they were going to kick me out. And I just said to her, don't worry, I'm actually going to sort myself out. And from that point, I just put my head down and just got on with stuff. And ever since then, I've just really thought about legacy and, just making the most of every opportunity. This country's not perfect, but, life's not perfect, but you just got to make lemonade where possible and just, take advantage of every opportunity. And in that, beautiful things happen.
I love that so much. And it's strange, isn't it? Like, we spoke a little bit offline about sometimes situations happen or life happens to us, right? And it's how we react or how we respond to those situations. And and like you said, sometimes we're on a path, but ultimately I'm really keen to explore, because for me, I think that in life, whatever happens to us in life, generally we have a choice. Not always a choice what happens to us, right? We can't, sometimes there's stuff out of our control, but we can choose how we react to those situations, right? And I think, like, listening to your story there, like, you're going down one path, right? But you that impacted you obviously in such a profound way to go, I'm going to take a choice not to carry on going that path. I'm going to take a choice to go on a new path, right? Because I would always describe you as someone, like you said, we spoke about it before, like about opportunities. Like, you'll see an opportunity and you'll go for that, and you'll explore that opportunity, and you'll keep going, and then you have business and et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these different aspects. But then describing yourself as you have done through school life, that's not recognising. It takes maybe something that happens in life to really open up that opportunity, right? That opportunity that for you.
Yeah, I think, I would imagine that a lot of people that were in my position at the time, if life is a story, we don't want it to play out in that way. But it's, what is going to happen that's going to make us go on a completely different course. And that's so hard, and it's not just with that, it could be with anything. It could be smoking, drinking alcohol, or the choices you make in terms of the people that you hang around with, your career. They're all really big changes to make in our lives. The question is, when are we ready, and are we going to do something about it? And I just feel fortunate enough that I just had to go to Gambia. That had to happen. I needed my life shaken up a little bit. I needed, real problems in front of me to acknowledge that I was actually letting myself down. And thank God that did happen, because I went on to college, university, a good university, Goldsmiths University, competed in pageants. I've just tried to do anything and everything because I can.
Well, and it's sometimes, like you said, it's sometimes recognising, and it's perspective sometimes helps, isn't it? You gain some perspective, you see some, whether it be poverty or whatever someone else going through struggles, whether it be illness or cancer or something like that, and you gain a perspective on where you are, and sometimes the things we worry about or things that affect us are not maybe that bad. And actually then we can take control of that situation, and we can move forward. Because I know I'm keen to, like, with that, I guess just before we go on to stuff, you mentioned a little bit about obviously with your aunt and your mum and stuff, and with racism and a little bit of that through school. Did that impact you much during your school life, or like when you was younger, or?
Yeah, I suppose it did, but maybe subconsciously. I mean, there were times where people did try and bully me, but I was quite a strong character. So I wouldn't take it, and with that, I think eventually people backed down. It's like, it's not worth it. But I don't think I would have gone into things like modelling and pageantry if there wasn't an element of me probably trying to prove to myself that just because I didn't look like, for example, what they wanted at the time of Miss England, which was the English Rose, that I wasn't beautiful, and that there are different versions of beautiful. So I've had a lot to prove to myself, I think, over the years. But even in that, I'm kind of grateful for feeling not good enough in order to really work at myself and let that go eventually and just be myself. And ultimately, I think that's where the real beauty comes, is when you just don't care.
And it's that, again, it's them question I often ask about, that them questions we ask when we look inward, right, as opposed to outwardly and external validation. We live in a society that celebrates external validation and social media and all of them things, whereas actually, again, back to true success, I guess, and how we really find ourselves is when we ask those questions inside, and we're happy and content with how beautiful we are in there. I think that for me definitely is where we find some real answers sometimes. So.
Definitely. And, it's played out, racism or how I see myself, how it's played out throughout my life is actually, it's fascinating. I was actually sort of reflecting on it recently, like when I became a standing invitee for Brighton and Hove City Council. And they had created this role to support more diversity within the council because there was no one of Black heritage sitting on any committee. And I got that opportunity and I felt so content with it. I've always loved politics. I love having a good argument. That part of me from when I was younger has never changed. It's just channeling it in a different way.
Yeah.
But some of the attacks and abuse that I received, weren't just from white people. There were people from the Black community that weren't very happy with me being in that position. I remember overthinking how I should communicate my identity. Would, start to, rather than say Black, it was, person of Black heritage because, I didn't want to take away something from somebody who was Black. But in actual fact, we're all on different journeys, and it's very difficult. We're just not in a position to judge other people. Like, what I experienced in Littlehampton, there was nobody like me in my school, I was the blackest girl in the school with afro hair. And I would imagine the feeling that, that made me feel like the bullying, that's no different to somebody who is Black and is also a minority and has no one else around them. It's about the feeling. It's not about sometimes what we actually look like. And I remember identifying that when I was young. My friends sometimes were people that were overweight or didn't necessarily fit into, what's commercially beautiful. But what I could identify with them is I knew it didn't feel nice when somebody called that person fat. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the insult is. Ultimately, we're all human beings and we shouldn't attack each other. And maybe if we focus more on what we have in common, there wouldn't be so much abuse in the world, but there we are.
And just like you said, just come from a place of kindness, right? Like what?
Yeah.
Like if we all got up every day, and I look at now and the society and the, not to get into politics too much, but the division that's being created even within the country now, right, with reform and stuff, that it's just, I can't grasp the understanding of it, that why in a society we want to cause division. Why do we want to do that? So it's a blame culture. So we can blame someone else for the circumstances I'm in. I'm going to blame. It's easier for me to blame another group of people, whether it be immigrants or whatever that is. I can't grasp it. So what does it look like if then people just was to sit there and just go, how did it? If we all come from a place of kindness, what does society then look like?
Yeah, I think, it's natural for us as human beings to be angry about things. But it goes back to what I said at the beginning. It's how do we then channel that anger? Are you going to sit there criticising everybody and blaming everybody? Or are you going to think about how you can potentially do something positive that, supports yourself and others in the community that you live in? And ultimately, I think those two different approaches, create two different results. And, a lot of the people that have criticised me along the way for, either being too Black or not Black enough.
Are you saying then that other Black people would say that would criticise you for, like, as in, like, what do you know, because you're not Black enough? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah. I think it's such a political situation, and ultimately, throughout history, there have been benefits to those that are lighter skinned, and it's not just with Black people, it's colonialism, and you still have cultures to this day that, refrain from being in the sun because they want to be more fairer skinned. And, sadly, that is embodied in culture. And off the back of that, it can create, division and, sometimes jealousy rather than, togetherness, I suppose. And yeah, just as I've experienced racism from people that are like, well, you're not like us in terms of the white community and, where do you come from sort of thing. It's been the other way as well. And that hasn't been nice. And that's definitely made me at times probably question where I sit in society. But yeah, I'd say that right at this moment in time, I don't really care. I'm just being me. And I think that's all you can really do.
Well, talk to me then about the pageantry. What was it what made you go into to do Miss Sussex and then on to Miss? What was the?
So I stayed at a cousin's house in London while I think I was doing some work experience at the BBC, and she was a hairdresser for the BBC. Still one of my closest cousins to date, and she was doing hair for one of the contestants of Miss Jamaica UK. And I went along and watched the show, and the woman who won it, she was very beautiful. Everyone was beautiful, but she didn't win it because she was the most beautiful on stage. She actually won it because of her care and love for her home country and representing Jamaica. And just, the opportunity to represent. And I absolutely loved that. And I was like, wow, this time next year I am competing. Like, this is absolutely amazing. And I thought about it all year and went for it. And I didn't win, but I won People's Choice. In fact, I was quite a controversial contestant. I think I offended some of the judges, but the crowd absolutely loved me. Because,
How did you offend anyone?
So, I'd been to Jamaica a few times. My nan returned back to Jamaica when I was about 18 years old for retirement. So whenever possible, I would fly up to Jamaica and stay with her, which was just such an amazing opportunity as a young person. And, off the back of staying with her and travelling as locals would travel and getting that full experience, it was just so apparent to me of the issues that Jamaica was experiencing off the back of colonialism and, globalisation, really. And I highlighted that in my pageant answer, just about how, it wasn't okay that you've got all these big international corporations coming in, buying the beaches and displacing local people. And various other things. And, I just wasn't really taking into consideration that half of the judging panel were representing international companies. Didn't know my crowd in terms of, how to get the crown. But that's what happened. I won People's Choice Award. And then about a month later, my auntie collapsed, and we found out that she was riddled in cancer. And I remember going to the hospital. I was meant to be going out for my birthday. It was January, and I was about an hour away from finishing work and going to the cinema with my dad and my brother. And I got the call saying, "You need to go to Worthing Hospital. Your auntie's collapsed." And then we went to the hospital, and some cold doctor was just like, she's got 24 hours to live, so say your goodbyes. And luckily she stayed around for another 3 months. But the grief of that just completely threw me, and I just went into a bit of a YOLO mental mode. And one day I was just sitting at work and I heard an advert on the radio, probably like from Juice or something, Juice FM back in the day, for Miss Sussex. And I never would have gone for something like that. I went for Miss Jamaica because, again, I thought to myself, black pageant, I've got more opportunities there. I wouldn't have seen myself winning on a commercial platform like Miss Sussex, but I went for it. The lady who was organising it, Fiona, was just so nice. Like, you know, unlike everyone else, I joined really late, a week before the competition. So she could have said, no, sorry, you know, everybody else has been competing already for a month. But no, she was like, if you can do X, Y, Z in a week, get yourself a sponsor, done. And weirdly, I was working for Andy. I went to Andy, I said, I want to compete for Miss Sussex. Would you sponsor me? And he was like, yeah. And didn't he lap it up? He absolutely, you know, made the most of it in terms of PR. But yeah, I went there on the day and I ended up winning and I could not believe it. That was a proud moment because I was not expecting it at all. And yeah, what then followed was actually quite hard in certain aspects, but it was also amazing. You know, I surrounded myself with people that I never would have been around. You know, we were from completely different backgrounds. I was never really a pageant girl. And yeah, it was such a brilliant experience and it made me just approach things that I never would have approached in a completely different way. I mean, prior to that, I'd never been to the gym. I'd never really thought about anything. I remember turning up at Miss Universe, GB, and going for lunch with the girls before the sort of, I don't know, programme started. And everyone's like, yeah, I'll have a salad. And there was me like, yeah, I'll have a burger. And everyone just turned and looked at me like, sorry, you're going to have a burger? You're going to be on a stage in 48 hours? Like, is she crazy? Like, it was like something out of Miss Congeniality. And I had no idea. I just wasn't thinking about it like that. You know, I'd never thought about my body like that or, you know, what a burger could do in 48 hours to your stomach. So yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Talk to us about like that world, like people may be listening and got an idea of what that world's like within the pageantry. What was your experience? You said you go into it and you was maybe different from some of the other girls, but what was your experience overall from it, from Miss Sussex to Miss U? Do you look back at it a positive experience? Was it?
Yeah, it was, you know, it was something that I was always going to do. Yeah. There were elements of it that I think were quite brutal. In terms of what I got out of it, there was a campaign for Miss Universe Great Britain, which was not in vain. Now, the pageant industry in itself is kind of built on vanity. But what I loved about that particular campaign and maybe the message that it was trying to put forward was, you know, sort of what a winner should really look like. You know, someone who gives to the community, someone who cares about the community, somebody who represents women, you know, not in terms of how she looks, but maybe her stance and what she stands for. And I think that's probably one of my key takeaways from the pageant experience. And I then tried to use elements of that in my business work. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what else I got from it. I mean, yeah, it was an amazing experience, but I think, yeah.
Do you think, as in regards to, like, I'm trying to connect then, like, with how, let's move forward to like sort of HERstory and what, you know, so much of what you do with that incredible event, which is the 5th year this year, right? But to empower women, like, do you feel like maybe there's elements of what you just mentioned about there with the pageantry and our view, like, could it be something I can empower women and I can do
100%?
Really?
Like, I kind of lost my track of thought through baby brain, but I remember when I came out of my last shot at Miss Universe Great Britain, and then I was like 28 and I was too old at the time. Luckily, they've changed these things now, so there isn't age restrictions and stuff. But that in itself was just brutal, like feeling too old at 28.
Wow.
And I went to a friend's birthday party, and someone who's very close to me now, like, I'd consider her one of my closest friends, but she was just a former school friend at the time. And she came up to me and she said, you know, I've been following you on social media, and she's mixed race. And she was just like, to see you, you know, a minority in that environment, just being you and giving it your all, you know, regardless of whether you've won or not, like, you know, you've inspired me. That was really powerful. Wow. And for me, that was kind of what it was all about, really, at the end of it, you know, loving yourself, but also like representing It was all about representation and making history. That's why I went into it. I knew when I won Miss Sussex, if I'd won Miss England, I would have been the first black woman to represent England in 73 years at the time. And that's what I wanted to do. That's what I set out to achieve. And I competed in Miss England. I didn't get anywhere. And then that night I got recruited for Miss Universe Great Britain. And again, I realised that the same opportunity was available, but it just at a shorter period. I think at the time, Miss Universe Great Britain had been going for about 35 years. And yeah, you know, even when I look back at certain pictures, you might have like 40 girls and like 3 of us are black, you know, or 5 of us are women of colour, for example. So, yeah, you know, we were all there to represent and, you know, show other women like, we're here and we've got a seat at the table. And, you know, off the back of, you know, those people turning up, if you look at a pageant now, it looks very different, you know, and those records have been hit. You know, and I was fortunate enough to see that, and I'm still connected to the first ever Miss Universe Great Britain, first black winner. And it's great to follow her journey. She's, you know, doing very well in politics overseas. But yeah, when I then went into legal services, working for a law firm, head of marketing, I was given the opportunity to run a women in business event. And yeah, you know, initially I saw that as quite a challenge because all the networking I'd done was in environments that were predominantly male. And I was thinking to myself, with my marketing hat on, like, how is this going to work? Like, how are we going to bring people into the room? Because they're not in the rooms that I'm attending. But with a strong group of women in a law firm who are connected to various accountants and professionals in financial services, you know, they brought together on the first event 30 senior women in professional services and business owners. And we did 4 of those. But I love to add purpose to what I'm doing, and I needed to take it a little bit further. And this is where I put my stamp on it, and HERstory became a thing, because I remember sort of drafting ideas, and I was like, International Women's Day. In 2020, it was 100 years since the women's suffragettes movement. And I thought, okay, what can I do with this? And yeah, I approached Anne Accord on the pier and said, you know, maybe we can light up the pier purple for a week and celebrate International Women's Day, get over 100 women on the pier and put on a big networking event. And ultimately, that's exactly what we did. And it had the opportunity to have, you know, to create some big PR at the time. The BBC were interested in covering the story. But yeah, the pandemic happened at the same time. So although we got 150 women on the pier for the first ever HERstory with 200 tickets sold, yeah, within 24 hours, about 50 people had cancelled because the policies within big companies had changed and they weren't allowed to go out to networking events. So yeah, that's how HERstory started. And then I've just tried to continue to keep the momentum going. And, you know, in more recent years, there's more competition, which is good. You know, it's good that there are more platforms for women in business. But yeah, it's my baby. And ultimately it comes from my pageant story, which is, you know, making history like wherever possible. And, you know, maybe what I didn't do enough of at that time was celebrating it. So the platform's all about celebrating what women have achieved to date, regardless of how big or small that looks.
I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant, it's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing. Love that. And look, we're I think things look different now. Where the society has changed, definitely, but we've still got so far to go, right? Like especially when it comes. I mean, look, you're within the business community here in Sussex and stuff, but and I do think that there's definitely more representation, but we've still got a long way to go, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, myself as a black woman in business, I'm still a minority, and I still have people sort of saying to me how empowering it is to see me hosting something like HERstory. Representation is such a powerful thing. And yeah, it's good to see more people of colour, and, of different genders, backgrounds, entering business spaces. And yeah, I hope that, continues. It's a shame that, it's also happening at a time where there's obviously a lot of conflict in the world. And, even to communicate something like this, people will listen to it and be like, oh, well, why is it about that? Why are you making a big deal out of it? Blah, 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 blah. But, it's not, that's never the intention. I think, for me, it's not about box ticking, and it's not about just getting more black people in the room. I think, if anything, there's a lot of people that are really good at what they do, that are just not connected to the right people, or are not operating in the right spaces. And it's about changing that so that, ultimately you've got the best people in the room. And that supports business, it supports community, it supports society. So it's not about box ticking, it's about creating more equality through people having the right talent and opportunity.
And how do we start to change? Is it more creating more spaces, as you say, more events like HERstory, more and actually just as well from whether it be, like you said, gender or race, whatever it is. But I think creating space. I remember speaking to Kevin Smith about it, and one thing that he highlighted, especially within the Brighton Sussex community, potentially, was that there's a difference between being welcome and feeling like you belong. And that really landed with me when he said that. I don't know if your experience of that, you can walk into a room and, of course, everyone's welcome. Doesn't matter what colour or race or gender or whatever, everyone's welcome. But there is a difference between that and feeling like you're walking into that room and you belong there.
Yeah, there is. And obviously it's important to feel like you're welcome and you can walk into a room. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's like all the answers, because I've always been quite a confident individual. I have felt uncomfortable walking into a room. Many people feel uncomfortable walking into a room. You don't have to be a minority to feel uncomfortable to walk into a networking room. If anything, maybe it's more about sort of confidence building, like us all thinking about, I can't change, for example, what somebody else thinks and sees of the world. I can only be the best version of myself. And I think there needs to probably be more of a message to, groups and individuals, especially young people, about self-belief and being good enough to already walk in that room. And it's okay to feel nervous. I've heard people, for example, when I've invited them to HERstory attracts women in senior leadership. And, there has been women of ethnic minorities that are like, but, I just don't want to walk into a room where, people just don't look like me. And, I would challenge that person to challenge their perspective and be like, no, you're good enough to walk into that room. So come and join me,
That's such a brilliant message. Because I think, and you talk about, I think the next generation and young kids, I think this is exactly it. This is what potentially for me the education system doesn't enable. doesn't give people enough self-belief because it only fits a small minority of people that fit that system, right? And I think actually as individuals, again, irrespective of race or gender or whatever, if we just give kids or people as a whole that self-belief, like we look inward more, again back to that thing of looking inward and finding that self-belief, what we could and really able to walk into a room with confidence, as you're saying.
Yeah.
And recognising that, like, you know, me and you both sit here as probably quite confident people, right? We could walk into most, still, I do, I'm sure you do, like you just we still get nervous from time to time, we're still, but actually recognising that feeling, and this is again back to some of the work we're doing in schools at the minute, is about just getting kids to identify what those emotions are and being able to sit with them, know that it's okay to feel a little bit anxious, right? Because anxiety and sometimes excitement are similar
100%.
feelings, right?
Yeah.
Just trying to, I think you're right, actually, listening to you talk within the business community, because I often think, like, events I host and stuff, how can we make it more diverse, more equal, so that people do feel generally like they belong there? And there is, I think there's got to be a responsibility and accountability on the people organising the event, I think, to create those spaces. But there is elements as well on accountability of that person, right, to just try and work on them to become the best versions of themselves, as you mentioned.
100%. Yeah, you know, I've been in some interesting spaces, and, you know, as much as I'd like to try and convince certain people, you know, to see the world in the way that I see it, or to do things in a way that I think would support a more diverse room, ultimately, you know, people have had their own experiences in life, and they're not necessarily always going to listen to my perspective and my opinion. So, yeah, you know, I think the more we focus on what we can do, the better, you know. And yeah, I suppose maybe I'd even apply that to some of the things that I've done. You know, I've always tried to do good wherever I can, but sometimes there's just not the right people around the table that are going to listen to me or see the world in the way that I see it. But I think what setting up my own business has done is provided me with a platform and opportunity to lead by example, so I can make my own change. And, you know, hopefully that, if there's 10 of me doing that, that's where the diversity in the business network will eventually change, because, you know, the people that are being invited into the room or even leading on these events looks very different. And that in itself creates change. And hopefully that's part of evolution. Hopefully that's the way we're moving forward.
Let's hope so. And I really believe, I think, like you said, the success and stuff you've had with HERstory and what you stand for, and it's so interesting to see that link as well between, like you said, putting yourself in that situation with the pageantry and getting front, but ultimately doing that for the right reasons, right? The reasons for you to go out and maybe make some change, and the same then leading on to HERstory now and going out and we're going to make some change. We're going to make history, right? And so things do look a little bit different for that next generation. And I guess, like, especially now, you're bringing a new person into the world, right? And I always think, like, with the twins, I always think to myself, like, what world do I want them to grow up in? Right? Can I do stuff on a regular basis to impact or change? And am I going to change the world? No. But can we change maybe our small corner of the world, and that creates a little ripple? Maybe that's a good thing.
100%. Yeah, we need more compassion. We need more gratitude. I recently went to South Africa, and I was just reminded of, you know, the power of Nelson Mandela. We need more powerful people like Nelson Mandela. Like, he led with compassion, and he led by example. And there was so much going on in South Africa at that time. He still had so many people that didn't agree with him on a national and international level. But, you know, he destroyed many negative perceptions of, you know, how he wanted to run the country, and what his visions were in terms of how the country should move forward. and how he did that, like, through something like sport, and the Springboks, and how that was, a very colonial sports team and sport in general. And, he got challenged by his own community for being like, yeah, let's host the World Cup here and let's really embrace this ultimately racist brand. But what he did with it, it's all about, I think, leading by example, turning up and being like, do you know what? I'm welcome here. You may not think I am, but I actually am. And I'm the top dog. So hi and bye. And I just love that. And I think we definitely need more of that, which is, what can we do? It's not always about what everyone else can do. And maybe if we focus more on that, there'd be less focus on some of the individuals that are running the world in a senile way at the moment.
Well, your highlight is so it's so clear that you mentioned Nelson Mandela and that the sign of what it means to be a great leader, right? That is a great leader, and you compare to Mr. Trump, and you go.
I didn't want to say his name just in case I plan to go into America anytime soon, but I don't think I
do. we're not going. Oh, just look.
Even that in itself, negativity being led by fear is just absolutely tragic. But, if people didn't buy a ticket to the World Cup, and did certain things and focus on other things, what can we all do, to ultimately make individuals listen to us? That's the thing.
I love that. You're right. And again, is this something we can teach kids? When you go and we're bringing them up to go into the world, what can we do to make the world a better? So I think I listen. I think I'll take from that and go, what can I teach the kids to go, like, what changed? And I look at it, only from obviously, I look at with, about Lucy and with her gender fluidity and that, just like, she at 10 years old, she's so like, she knows who she is and she's going out and she's just being herself and representing who she really believes she is. And I remember when I posted something recent, was after the Supreme Court ruling, and I had some people message me saying about I said, like, I feel like we'd gone a backward step in humanity, right? And you go, like, what does it? And they was like, I didn't necessarily agree with you, I don't think, and which is fine. And like I said, I'm always open to other people's opinions, but you just, as a father, you look at it, if you could see it through the eyes, the world through the eyes of kids, right? And it's so innocent, just going, I wish the world could see me as I am, like, not what the, you know what I mean? I think, like, what and I said to the person who messaged me, I was like, what would, if your daughter come to you and said that, like, why can't the world see me as I am and not, think, oh, I'm not. And,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think, like, and if we all viewed things in that way, and like you said, I like the thing that you mentioned, like, what can we do as individuals to be able to do that? And there's something in that.
Definitely.
I wanted to talk, like, just with with your journey and obviously starting your own business and the entrepreneurship side of stuff and going into that. Like, talk to me a little bit about that, because obviously with you mentioned earlier about, like, getting to a ceiling within your profession where you were, just felt like that was there ever, going back, was there ever a thought of starting your own business, like, growing up and stuff? Like, did you think, like, eventually one day I'll do that, or was it?
No, I didn't, if I'm honest. It's something that actually, an idea that I would say that was like, that came from other people acknowledging what my skills were, and then me sort of reflecting on it, and then maybe, like a few years before it happened, being like, oh, do you know what, maybe I could. And I think that just comes from, like, not seeing myself as intelligent enough to run a business. Like, I'm naturally a creative. And going back to my interests at school, art, or, even the things that I enjoyed, in my late teens, early 20s, modelling, working with makeup artists, fashion, like, that was, like, what I enjoyed.
But that's like, listening to that, like what you just said, this is, again, back to sometimes for me, the problem with the education is all of them things that you've highlighted are not celebrated as much in school as the academic side of stuff, right?
100%. Yeah.
And that's where maybe the problem.
Yeah, and even going to university to me was more about taking advantage of every opportunity that was available to me. It wasn't about thinking that I'm academic in any way, shape or form. Yeah, and it just goes back to, that epiphany in Gambia. And if it was available to me, I was going to go for it. But yeah, no, I generally didn't. I'm actually quite a spiritual person, and where this started for me was going to see a tarot card reader, I think after the passing of my auntie, where I was in my YOLO mode, and me being like, so am I going to win Miss England? And she was like, no. And I was like, what? So even if I put 100% into this, you're telling me that there's no chance whatsoever? And she was like, no. And she identified loads of other things that sadly I just didn't want to hear. Like she told me that the relationship that I was in, it was like I was the horse and he was the cart and I was just putting him along and eventually that would end. And I remember saying to her, no, I'm pretty sure he's my soulmate. Are you sure about that? And she was like, well, you can give it a go, but I just don't really see it working out. And then I said, so what is going to happen? She was like, you're going to do really well in the corporate world. And I was like, the corporate world? Like, I've just gone into sales and marketing because it was an opportunity that was presented to me. It's not really where I'd seen my career going. And she was like, no, and law will play a part in it. And weirdly, I left that, that was my first tarot card reading, and I left her house in a not very good mood. I was thinking to myself, I was meant to come out feeling like, positive about my future, and she's basically destroyed all of my dreams. But I didn't, some people might say, oh, these things play out because, someone's presented them to you and then you work towards them. But I actually did the opposite. She told me that I wasn't going to make it in pageantry. I competed for another 5 years. Like, I had no intention of giving up until it was actually taken away from me, I suppose. Yeah, and the same with my relationship. And it's just funny how things play out. And I think the only thing that I did do is that, I've always applied 100% into my job, even if I didn't necessarily think, oh, that's going to be, the next chapter. I just see everything going back to that, to the alchemist story. There are omens that are presented to you in life and you've just got to go with it, and you never know what that next chapter is going to look like. But as long as you're doing the best in that moment with what's around you, that next opportunity is going to present itself and you don't always know what that's going to look like. And yeah, in many ways, I would say motherhood's been a bit like that as well.
Really? In what way?
So I didn't know whether I would end up having children. I convinced myself that maybe I couldn't have children, but also I was very career focused. And yeah, I just, going back to my ethos in life, it was just do your best version of you. And I think also coming from a family that's separated, I knew that I don't know, it's like I was looking for perfection before I was willing to be a mum myself, because I just didn't want to potentially create issues that I've experienced myself, like going into a relationship, and obviously my mum and dad expected to be together forever. They were married and stuff, but the impact of divorce on me was brutal, and I wouldn't want to then do that to somebody else, having experienced it. And I think there's a lot of people like that, that come from broken families where it either goes one way or the other. You either think, I want to make a family and I don't ever want that to happen to my family, or it can be the other thing where it's like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to do that because I'm still kind of scarred from what's happened to me. And yeah, mine was the latter. But yeah, when I found out that I was pregnant, I had those initial thoughts of overthinking it, like, oh my God, am I ready? Because it's such an important thing, to do well and lead by example with your own children. And yeah, now I've sort of relaxed and had a bit of faith in myself. I'm really looking forward to, that next chapter and just being the best version of myself, but not for myself, but for someone else now, which is, it's funny how things start. It started, for me when I got myself into gear, thinking about the past and what people have done to allow me in this position now, and now it's about the future. So
So there's a couple of things that, like you mentioned earlier about, you mentioned just then about I want to, about not having children because of I want to be perfect, or what does that look like? I think actually I'm already, and there's all them questions that come. I think like if anything I've learned from life is that things are never good. We're never going to be perfect ever, any of us. When it comes to parenthood, the only thing I can say is there's no rule book, and you can read a million books about it, and you just don't. I think every parent is winging it. As similar as we are in business as well, like the comparisons between business and probably parenthood are quite similar in the sense that we are just winging it, and you get up every day, and ultimately is just doing the best that we can, and that's all we can do, right? And I often always look at the kids, and they're 10 now, and I sort of go, come on, try not to repeat patterns maybe from previous. But then I look at my mum and dad are still together now. They're beautiful people, and it's amazing. And yet, me and Kelly are navigating a separation, right? So you sort of go and that was a big question for me. I Kelly come from her parents split up, but later in life, so she was in her 20s, but really impacted her still then, even at that age. And then for me, and what does that then look like for them? But I think there's everyone's different, and every story is different, and every way how you navigate. And I'm hoping that we're doing it in the right way. Do you know what I mean? But we do the best we can with what we've got in front of us, right? And whatnot.
100%. And I can't believe now, in terms of where I am now, in terms of what my approach was, I suppose, to this situation. I think, it's just me trying to control my own narrative. But I was wrong, and I've been wrong about quite a few things, I
don't think it's about being wrong. I don't think it's about being wrong. It's just we only know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. So we just. But even I remember still asking myself, even when Kelly, we'd gone through miscarriages, IVF, all sorts to get pregnant, and when we did, even then, until they were born, I was still going, am I ready? I fucking better get ready. Do you know what I mean? You're always questioning that until they're there, and then you've got to be ready, and you are, and you just naturally you're find your way, and that's the thing. Loads of people will give you advice, I'm sure, and there'll be loads of stuff, and take what you want and take what you don't, but you just do, and you'll be an incredible mum, right?
Thank you.
You will. And was there obviously with the how did you mentioned about the business side of it as well, and with that what played on your mind with that as well, thinking I'm been building this business and how things are going to change as well, like you said, what was in your head there, thinking was it then, I'm going to have to make this plan to because things are going to look different, right?
When I initially found out I was pregnant, I thought it's so over dramatic now, but generally just to communicate how I felt, I felt like it was all over. I was like, everything I've just worked towards for several years is about to almost undo itself slightly, because I'm going to have to take a break. There's not going to be someone there to do my work. I'm going to lose my clients. It was just, that's where my thought process was. I found that quite soul destroying. And it's such a shame, that I felt like that. But at the same time, because I remember thinking to myself, who can I talk to? Who has set up a business in the last couple of years and then got themselves pregnant and can advise me on how to go about it, And there's so many different things that come into it, in actual fact, I know loads of people that, it might not have been the same time scale, but, you know, they've set up a business, they've got pregnant, they've then got people in. But then, you know, someone who's running a product-based business is very different to someone who's running a service-based business. So, yeah, I couldn't see it because I hadn't seen it. And that really scared me. But, yeah, I eventually started to think about, what can I do? And one of the first things that I thought about was, how can I make HERstory happen? And it just created just a foundation, I think, to build on. I was very scared to tell my clients, so I actually kind of almost hid my pregnancy, like, in the business community and at work for a good couple of months. Some people noticed, but I was really nervous. Like,
but nervous because of what other people would think or say about the situation, or what was
nervous, I think, of like losing control. Like, I wanted to tell my clients when I had a plan in place, and I didn't want to be that person that people gossiped about and said, "Oh, I think Stephanie's pregnant," and then that goes to, you know, my clients, and then they then think about a plan B. So it was all about control, which is something, you know, perfection, control, these things. There's a connection with all of these that, sometimes don't serve me in the best way. But, you know, and sadly, you know, there were experiences where, you know, I've told individuals, and it has been, well, we like working with you, so we'll stop for now, you know. But then at the same time, there's been, you know, clients that have really embraced it and have just been, you know, quite supportive, understand why I've made the decisions that I've made, and haven't seen it as necessarily I have to pause. I think that's the thing. And it's also about what I've seen as well, you know. Like, I remember in employment seeing someone, a partner, you know, a very good lawyer, come back from maternity leave and just be spoken to like utter crap. You know, it's not always intentional, but it's just not okay. And I really felt for that person. Like, you know, they came to a meeting and they're trying to understand what they've missed, and they're just dismissed off the back of it. It's like, yeah, well, you haven't been here. And it's brutal. I've also seen, you know, women almost have to play a game in order to come back in a more comfortable way, you know, getting to that senior level before they announce their pregnancy, and then announcing their pregnancy, so they're in a safer space for when they come back. And I think I've absorbed all of this, and I've, you know, observed it, and it created panic for me, and something that I didn't want to just go into self-employed without a plan in place. So the fact that I didn't have a plan and I wasn't in control, you know, and it's not, it completely worried me and threw me. So, I tried to control it as much as possible by hiding it initially, and then when I had a plan in place, communicating that. But even that was so daunting, because that person can just turn around and say, actually, no, like, it's okay. You know, we don't need your services anymore. And then I could end up, you know, being in a position where I'm bringing a baby into this world and I'm not in a position to provide for them. And, you know, I've even had that challenge where it's like, well, can you not rely on your partner? But it's like, that's not actually me. Like, that's not who I am. And that's not the person that I want to, that's not the type of parent I want to be. Like, I want to lead by example. I want to show them, you know, that I do things my way, and, you know, I'm a hard worker, and with hard work comes good results eventually, you know. And the thought of that all being taken away from me, ultimately, that's my identity, scared the hell out of me, if I'm honest.
And do you think, like, with women especially, like, there's so much pressure in it as well on women to be able to do that, right? So if you are in that position, to be able to, am I going to be able to, maybe that question, are you going to be able to run a business and be a mother at the same time, a good mother? And do you know what I mean? And then there's so much there's so much pressure on that, but a lot of it that sometimes our own narrative, but society maybe. Do you feel like there's more pressure, obviously, on women to be able to create an environment, to be able to be all of those things?
Yeah, no, I think that's even been something that's been presented to me during pregnancy. Not everybody maybe agrees with how, my plans for the future, or, even putting on HERstory. I'll be exactly 8 months pregnant when I host that event. And there are definitely people that have been like, yeah, I don't know about that though. Like, are you going to be okay? What happens if you give birth before then? What happens about this? What happens about that? And I have all these, negative thoughts in my head. But at the same time, like, you can't live life like that. You don't walk out your house every day and think, oh, I might get hit by a bus today. Let me not go out. Because it's just not how you're supposed to do it. It's how can I do something? So if anything, it was, HERstory is important this year, maybe more important than it will ever be. And in terms of representation, being there, 8 months pregnant and deciding that that's my last day, has been really important for me. And then it's been, well, how, there's certain things I can't control. I could end up, going into labour beforehand, but not focusing on that and focusing on what I set out to achieve and making sure that I'm as comfortable as I can be on the day and I've got the support that I need around me on the day. And ultimately that's been my goal. And, as much as there's been some really negative situations that have been presented to me, and I appreciate, some of these negative comments actually come from a good place. People just care. They just don't know how to communicate it in a way that actually sometimes supports me personally or makes me feel good. But at the same time, the opposite of that is, I approached 3 women that are on my panel as sponsors, Lucy Daw, Carol Gilling-Smith and Fal Blake. And I told them, of my position. I remember even saying to Lucy in the CAF, like, I told her what I've just said to you about what's been presented to me and that she might think I'm mad. And it just, like, her response was just like, well, yeah, like, things happen, but, if it happens, it happens. In the meantime, like, just go for it. And I just can't believe, like, through trying to do what I've set out to achieve, I've met these amazing individuals that have supported me, in what I set out to achieve. And, they're exactly the type of people that I want to work with going forward. Like, it's so lovely. And I'm just so grateful to them and to my clients for, not giving up.
But, and that's lovely to hear that there are them people around, and I think which is great. But actually, I think so much of it comes from the type of person you are, right? You're such an inspiration. And I think actually, see it, and I know you will, standing on that stage at HERstory, and it's going to be such a magical, amazing event. You've been such an inspiration, like seeing the things you've done, starting a business and all the things over the years I've got to know you. And it's an amazing thing that you're going to do with HERstory, and it's going to be incredible. And you should be really proud. And actually, like, for that next chapter, for the person that you bring into the world, boy or girl, what an amazing role model and inspiration you'll be for them, right?
Yeah, I just feel extremely grateful to be in a position where I've literally just tried to do it my way, and hopefully there's something in that. And it'll be great to have, my baby's going to be with me on stage, and they're going to be listening to all these, like, amazing conversations and powerful women, women that I look at and think, that's where I want to be in a few years' time, even the panel itself this year, when I first started HERstory, I think we had one business owner on the panel, Kathy Caton, and some amazing women from professional services, but, many of which working for organisations that are still male-led. And with that, comes, I work for a big brand. I've got to be careful about what I say, et cetera, et cetera. And this year there's so much freedom. The women I've got on my panel, they all run their own businesses. There's millions on that stage on that day. And it's just such a brilliant thing to promote and celebrate. So, yeah, I feel very fortunate to be in that position.
It's going to be, man. It is, and HERstory is a celebration, right? That's what it is. It's a celebration of just amazing women that within our community, and again back to great leadership, right? You're the one leading on that. You're the one that started it, and here we are 5 years later, and what an amazing thing to do. And
thank you.
And I think like even like moving forward, like I'm keen to with like because starting a business and going there is with Motherhood is the ambition. What does the ambition look like now? Is that the same? Is it more? Is it different? What is it?
Such an interesting question. I just aim to come back at some point, but in a different way. It'll probably be maybe less working, hopefully, strengthening my business and bringing in other people, but yeah, still having involvement and leading in various ways, but ultimately, enjoying a different chapter in life. It's so weird. Like if a year ago, I wouldn't have been thinking about the things that I'm thinking about, but now I think, how nice it would be to almost have that burden and responsibility of, if I want to go to the gym today, I've got to bring this little one with me, but we're going to go swimming together. I really look forward to those kind of things. Like, it's just going to look very different, but I look forward to that. I look forward to the challenge of it almost as well. And yeah, not just with my business, but, with my child, just providing them as many opportunities as possible so that they can be, the best human that they can be, but also just enjoy life and work to their strengths as well. I really look forward to exploring what their strengths are. Are they like me? Are they not like me? And learning off the back of that. I see so many parents learning from their kids,
They're our biggest teachers, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, so I look forward to that, and I definitely intend to, come back to work and hopefully, maybe even it'll. I don't want to say work harder. It's just gonna be work differently.
I think that's a really and I think like there is the ability to. I always put two take like I think me and Kelly have always talked about this in relation to like as a woman, and you on the WhatsApp groups with the schools and the school gate conversation and stuff like that, and there's different perceptions of what that looks like. Okay, so and she always would question, like she's just become a judge and she's like doing so well, but she's I'm not. Am I being the best mother I can? And there's for me, there's always that caveat, like you're not. Whether you're a stay-at-home mum or dad, whatever that is, that looks like, right? Does that make them the best parents? I don't necessarily agree. I think like actually the best parents are you being the best version of you. And if the best version of you is that I'm gonna, of course you're gonna be there for your children, and you're gonna bring them up. But at the same time, you're still gonna be you, and you're gonna go and build a business and then build something. Because then I think if you follow your dreams and do what lights you up, that gives them the inspiration to do the same.
Yeah, I think there's so much pressure on parents these days, probably one of the reasons why it wasn't something that, initially like jumped into, like, but I think back to a saying about it takes a village to build to grow a child. And maybe one of the problems is that we live in an environment these days where like we're not always seeking that support. We're just so busy. Everyone's just working really long hours. And I think lockdown kind of like reduced that and made us all think about life very differently. So yeah, I would say, when I think back to my childhood, like some of my best experiences were like being with other family members when, whether that was my mum working, because, I grew up in a working family. My mum worked part-time. My dad was full-time. I even remember like, weirdly, like my brother, when he was born, and I was like 2. And I just kind of remember like my mum kind of going back to work quick, like it just wasn't a thing. And that's the kind of environment that I've grown up around, just like a very strong woman who just gets on with things. So yeah, but at the same time, it then creates pressures where you probably question whether you're missing out or not. But yeah, I think where possible, we should definitely not hesitate to lean on others. And young people learn so much from a variety of adults. It's not just their parents. So as long as you've got the right circle around you, I think that's so important in the part that they'll play in a child's upbringing and growth and story.
Love it. It's so, I'm so excited for you for this new chapter, and I think you're just going to flourish in all aspects of it. I know you are. It's going to be beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
What as we're coming towards the end, what if you could go back to a 25-year-old Stephanie in the pageants and that, what would from all your experience now and where you are and just about to become a mother and running a business, what would you say to her?
Do you know, it's if I'm brutally honest, like I don't think I could say anything to that person. I think everything almost has to play out and has had to play out in the way that it has. The mistakes, warts and all, and I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for everything that I've learned along the way. So yeah, I have no regrets, and I would just tell that person to just keep probably doing exactly what they're doing, and with a bit of faith and hard work, it should hopefully work out.
Love that. And then some. Well, look, you've been to obviously our top table, so we've got our closing tradition on the podcast. Okay,
perfect.
So we one of my magic cards. You know how much I love the cards. But so Julie, you don't get a lot of time to think about these ones though. So choose it and pass it back to me, and I'll read it out to you.
Okay.
What's the most important lesson a relationship has taught you?
I don't know how to communicate this, but I think, like, if I think about my current relationship and where we first started, right? For example, I was watching Bridesmaids the other day, the comedy, brilliant film, and the main character, she's got an idea of, or maybe she's stuck in a pattern of going for the same people. And yeah, just not changing things, or looking outside of the box. And off the back of that, you're presented with the same thing, and sometimes the same mistakes happen. When I met my partner, like, he had so much going on in his life and I had so much going on in my life. I'd just come out of a long-term relationship. He was going through a divorce. He had 3 children. I was like early 30s, and ultimately, in terms of like, ideals in life, we probably didn't fit. And I, at the time, just trying to be like sensible and thinking about how maybe things should play out for me, I nearly missed an opportunity to be where I am now. So I think I've learned so much from our relationship in just being open, to new opportunities, and people, and what you can learn from people, and how things are just not really as they always seem. And in that, I've had some of the best experiences of my life, and, I've met an amazing person that I'm just so enjoying life with and feel very grateful to be carrying his baby. So, yeah, I don't know how you'd say that, but that's what I've learned, and it's been quite something.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for being just a good friend, really, over the years, and it's been amazing to see your journey, and I can't wait to see you standing on that stage at HERstory.
Thank you.
And it being the best one yet, which I'm sure it will be.
Thank you.
And for being on the front cover of SBT and all the stuff you're doing, and actually just for someone who's a father of 2 daughters, to have people like you in the world that are truly inspiring women is amazing. So just keep doing you and keep inspiring so many people around us. So
Thank you, Sam.
I wish you all the best for
Thank
the future.
you. I love you right back.
And that, as they say, is a wrap.